Few questions that we have that have come in, and in keeping with the trend for the day, there are no actual easy questions here, so I'll just go ahead and get started. For Jerome, a past study by the Shep Center showed that African Americans were less likely to pursue training past the first credential or two. So they might do CNA, they might do CNA 2, but then they jump off. What is the healthcare industry doing to address this perhaps lack of aspiration or stopping at a particular area or perceiving that there needs to be a place to stop?
So Shep Center, that's UNC, is that correct?
All
right.
Thanks for reminding me. Shep Center does amazing work. We love the Shep Center.
They sure do. Well, I think we have to look at upstream. We have to look at why that is, okay? And some of it, not all of it, has to do with policies. Some of it has to do with lack of social capital. Some of it has to do with lack of awareness. And I think that if we go upstream and begin to engage individuals at an early age, elementary school, middle school, and high school, to begin to form those social capital bonds, I think that will help impact some of that in the future. I do think some of it is awareness, and some of it has to do with barriers as well to higher education, whether it be financial barriers, whether it be inability to rise to the academic challenge. But I think a lot of the solutions begins way upstream early in childhood.
Stephen, you mentioned this, what I think is a pretty significant pivot by the Business Roundtable to moving from pure maximization of shareholder value to viewing shareholders much more broadly and talking about stakeholders. And I'm wondering from your perspective, to what extent that is, you think, a meaningful, long-lasting trend, and maybe for Gary, to what extent do you see that happening with smaller businesses in the state?
Well, I actually think it's not a new thing or a trend. I alluded to that earlier. I actually think the fact that it was codified and published and acknowledged in such a kind of a public way, I think is just a really nice step for a group of business leaders to acknowledge that stakeholders are more than just shareholders. Shareholders are important, and I don't think any public company CEO is ever going to tell you that they're not. But recognizing publicly how important the workforce is, the customers are, the supply chain part of the business, the communities that we are doing business in, putting them kind of on the same level as shareholders, I think was significant in its acknowledgement, but hopefully not new for Duke.
Gary, what about smaller businesses? Is this a luxury that larger businesses can use, or is this an important part of the behavior of smaller businesses?
Yeah, I think it's an inherent part of behavior of the leadership of any business. So when you look at how, like Stephen said, your leadership determines how you look at the world. And so businesses have been doing this of all sizes for a long time. But leadership changes, times change, the pressures change, but it's inherent upon the leadership of any company. And oftentimes what gets lost is that there's this symbiotic relationship between large business and small business. Each industry has a multiplier effect. So if you're a large business, your multiplier effect, 1, 2, or 3 indirect jobs are created because of your presence in a community. So I was with Glaxo Wellcome, GlaxoSmithKline for 19 years. And our multiplier effect was 5 to 1. So every direct job that Glaxo hired, there was 5 indirect jobs that were created. And those jobs were not created with bigger businesses. They were created with small businesses, suppliers, researchers, all kinds of folks, consultants that were critical to achieving the mission. And so that relationship has always existed. So people like to do business with people who have similar cultures and think like they do. So as Stephen was saying, the culture's been there and people have been connected. Companies have not been good historically at coming out and saying, we do this. They've been kind of with I don't know, not withdrawn, but they've been kind of saying, of course we do this, why do we have to say it? And I think now you're saying, yeah, we should be more committed to saying it out loud. When you say it out loud, it's, being a good Catholic altar boy, and you say it to the priest, and then you're in, So when you go to confession and you say the words, somehow there's no more hiding or rationalization anymore.
This is a question it's more of a comment, really. I'll just read it. Just like teachers with student loan forgiveness policy, albeit limited and subject to improvement, nurses and I would suggest young farmers should be included in this type of policy initiative. I wonder, Dr. Williams, what you think about loan forgiveness to increase the supply of nurses?
Wow, it's putting me on the spot there on that one. That's a hard one. Well, I think that we have to Gary's point as well, we have to not just look at this only from a societal standpoint, okay? It's good for society, which it is, but we also have to put a business bend on it too, okay? And in the information I just shared earlier, there was a benefit to the individual, there was a benefit clearly to Novant, and there's a benefit to the community. And I think that if we are able to find that common thread, then we can leverage that information to make it work, to have a blanket statement, just loan forgiveness. I can't speak to that. I have to look at it as an individual opportunity and see where the common thread is for a win-win-win situation.
All right, it's a question for Stephen. What is Duke's position on hiring justice-involved individuals or folks with misdemeanors or felons? And wondering whether there's a company policy on that.
There's not a company policy to my knowledge, so I don't know the answer to that. I do know that we try and draw from all communities when we are hiring. I didn't get a chance to talk about the level of funding and the programs that we are sponsoring at our community colleges around the state to promote careers in our industry. So I don't know that there's a policy, Leslie, but I know that we do really want to draw from a variety of communities. Diversity and inclusion is important to us. We pull from all sectors of the state. We pull from the veteran community and try and promote second careers for veterans in our industry. I'm not aware of that.
Okay. I'm going to direct this to Gary, although Dr. Williams could answer it also. How could we encourage other employers to provide paid training opportunities of the sort that Novant has undertaken?
I'm showing the examples like we talked about, and a number of them are already doing it. Our manufacturing industry in particular has really embraced on-the-job training, apprenticeship programs of all different types, working closely with our community colleges and others. And I think highlighting the good examples, in business folks are intuitively competitive, right? So they're saying, wow, if they're doing that and they're assuring their workforce supply and they're bringing their costs down while creating better lives for their folks and their community is healthier, eventually I'm going to lose and people are going to lose if I don't do what they're doing. It's the right thing to do, and it appeals to the competitive nature. So what we have to do collectively is tell the good stories a little bit more. I had a CEO I worked for at Glaxo. He said, Gary, go out and get caught doing something good today. Right? So I think we need to get out there and get caught doing something good. Businesses do something. Businesses are people. Oftentimes we forget that, and self-included, you forget, right? You talk about shareholders and you talk about the different challenges in businesses and business issues you have to take into consideration, but none of that happens without people. So I think we got to tell the good stories better, and it's not being arrogant, it's not being self-fulfilling. For a long time, my company didn't want to tell the good stories it was doing because people thought they were doing it just because they wanted to sell more medicine. Right? So they said, no, Gary, don't tell the good stories. We do that because it's right. I think it's okay to tell the good stories and to be humble about it, but proud that you're doing the right thing.
I think that's a great idea for a new awards program. It's the Caught Doing Something Good awards program. Think about annual awards where we recognize those people who have been caught doing something good. It's a really fun idea. Thanks to all of our panel. Thank you for being with us, and thanks for your ideas and what your companies are doing.